Today's topic is an important one, and it's closely related to some of the things we've been talking about a lot the past couple days, like berberine, for instance, and disease states from overconsumption of sugars. And that's blood glucose management. So we're going to get into that today and look at some actionable strategies that we can take to manage our blood glucose before it spirals out of control and requires pharmaceutical intervention to manage properly. Now, we can't have a blood glucose conversation without talking about the hormone insulin. Now, insulin, as most of you know, is a hormone that's secreted by the pancreas in response to the presence of glucose in the blood, and one of its purposes is to drive nutrients where they need to go. Specific to glucose, as you saw in the infographic, it is akin to a key that unlocks the glucose channel to allow the glucose to enter the cell. If you are insulin sensitive, that process goes without a hitch very efficiently. When you become insulin resistant, what ends up happening is less glucose gets moved out of the blood per unit volume of insulin. This is a slippery slope, ultimately resulting in a pre-diabetic state and then a full diabetic state, type 2, where insulin hardly moves any glucose, if any at all, from the blood. The mechanism becomes broken, and that can lead to extremely deleterious second and third order of effects. Now, if you're thinking about what I said critically, your immediate thought should be, well, we have to eat. If I secrete insulin every time I eat, and too much insulin secretion too often is a problem, how can I avoid a resultant disease state? The answer is actually very simple to execute. It's just that people don't want to do it for a meaningful period of time to not have these problems. Those solutions are a restriction of food intake, not eating so often, sleep duration and quality, and then, of course, exercise. Both resistance exercise to increase your muscle tissue to have a pocket to store extra glucose, as well as cardiovascular conditioning exercise to increase mitochondrial function to better utilize glucose. Those things in conjunction can turn you into a glucose utilizing machine and very insulin sensitive. So let's start off with exercise first, because I've talked about it almost ad nauseum in several videos, but let's rehash it real quick here. Starting with the thing that all y'all love the most, lifting, resistance exercise, okay? When it comes to glucose, and I keep saying glucose because at the end of the day, that's ultimately what everything we eat turns into, because biology runs off of it. You can have it in your blood for a brief period of time if it's going to be used. But glucose is not meant to hang out in the blood. In fact, you're going to have serious problems if it stays there for too long and there's too much of it in there. So if that's the case and we aren't going to use it, like say we eat, a really big dinner and then go to sleep, well, where are we going to put all that glucose? Some of it is going to get stored in our liver, particularly the fructose portion. Liver loves fructose, but everyone's got one of those to store some of their glucose in. But the liver isn't really a thing that you can increase the capacity of, right? So what's our other option to increase our hard drive space, if you will, for glucose? It's muscle tissue. Glucose can get stored in the muscle, as well as the liver, as glycogen to be utilized later, like for instance, the following morning, if that's when you train. For instance, me, I ostensibly train fasted. However, actually, I'm far from fasted because dinner is usually my largest meal of the day. And so I have quite a bit of muscle and liver glycogen to train off of in the morning. The presence of glucose in the blood is one of the factors that initiates the insulin response to move it out of there. But muscle, just in of itself, can transport glucose without the use of insulin. So not only do you have a place to store all the glucose so that it doesn't have to go into your blood, but also you can move some of it in there without even the need of insulin. This is one of the reasons why postprandial walks, like going for a 10-15 minute walk after you eat, is a very powerful tool for glucose management. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself and skipping to the cardio portion, but it is relevant here because it is the mechanical action of muscular contraction that moves the glucose from your blood into the muscles independent of the insulin. Okay, so that segues nicely into the cardio portion. So besides the postprandial walks, which honestly is a super simple, really actionable tool for anyone to manage their blood glucose and to prevent insulin resistance, but also the other thing that conditioning does, particularly long steady state conditioning, like 30 plus minutes, zone 2 type stuff. This type of activity, a lot of people nowadays kind of poo-poo it because like, you don't need to do all that cardio to get lean, bro, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to increase your VO2 max. Yeah, that's not what it's for though. What it's for is this. And what this is it increases your mitochondrial density, which has tremendous benefits to your overall health, specifically in the area of glucose management. The cardiovascular benefits notwithstanding, just doing your conditioning to increase mitochondrial density in your slow twitch fibers, because that's where the lion's share of them are, you become not only good at storing glucose, but also using it so that the unused portion doesn't need to get converted into triglycerides afterwards. Okay, so we've talked about resistance training, we've talked about doing our cardio, we've talked about walking after meals. Let's briefly touch on sleep. Sleep, of course, checks a couple of boxes. First of all, sleep is when most of your repair and recovery functions take place, most of which are very energy intensive. So even though you think of sleep as not doing anything, there's actually quite a bit of stuff that your body's doing while you're asleep. It just can't do it while you're awake and in conscious control of yourself. But then the other thing is when you actually have extended and good quality sleep, dun da da da, spoilers, you're not eating, which means you have a meaningful period of time where your blood glucose levels are stable and your poor pancreas can get a break from having to secrete insulin to mobilize it all the time. Then that segues nicely into the diet portion. This one is simple, and I've said it in I don't know how many videos now to date. If you really want to manage your blood glucose levels, just don't snack. A lot of people like to go from just eating all the time like Cookie Monster to pendulum swinging all the way over to intermittent fasting. And if you want to do that for the mental exercise, that's cool. But for the glucose management benefits, you don't need to fast. Just don't eat for a couple hours in between meals. A really simple, actionable strategy is just eat like breakfast and then wait 3 to 5 hours and then eat your lunch and then wait 3 to 5 hours and then eat your dinner. Or if you have 4 or 5 meals, just do like 1 to 3 hour breaks in between them. It usually only takes an hour or two for your blood glucose levels to return to normal. And by avoiding that spike crash sine wave that people have that snack all the time, you can avoid becoming insulin resistant. Because the thing is, folks, this doesn't happen overnight. This is an insidious, long-term, chronic resultant state from years of blood glucose mismanagement. Not months, not days, but years. So, before you get too far gone and actually need drugs like metformin or even supplements like berberine, remember that the solutions to avoid this issue are simple. It's just you have to do them consistently for a meaningful period of time for them to be effective. The pharmaceutical industry has tried and spent many billions of dollars to develop solutions more efficacious than just consistent, good diet, good sleep, and exercise. And they continue to fail. Blood glucose management is just that. It's management. And it's a thing that you can do on your own with the simple, actionable tools that nature's provided you. So remember, consistency is a superpower. Stay in the fight. Thanks for watching.